Hi, this is Nick Curto for Disclosure Network New York, and it's Sunday, that's January 13th, I believe that's right, and it's at 2 o'clock, and we're now doing Zoom meetings.
17th.
Oh, it is the 17th, sorry, and we are doing Zoom meetings right now until COVID-19 is out of here in New York City, and we can go back to face-to-face regular meetings at our meeting place in the West Village. And I think everybody is longing to do that. There's nothing like seeing each other face to face, but right now with the Zoom meetings are taking place on the same schedule as we would have done with our regular meetings. So it's the first and third Sunday of each month throughout the year, unless there's a special holiday, and then we'd reschedule. But that's what we generally have as our schedule. I'd like to go around now and just say hello. If you just say your first name and where you're from. We'll start with Anthony. Go ahead.
I am Anthony, and I am in Flushing, New York.
Okay. Hal?
Hal, Lost Borough of New York.
You mean Staten Island? Okay. We'll go to Susan. So you got to unmute, Sue. So you have to unmute, if you will.
Yeah.
Hi.
I know it says Susan, but people call me Sarah, so that's I know it's confusing, and I'm in Brooklyn.
Okay. We'll go to it's Carol.
Hi, I'm in Chelsea, Manhattan.
Beautiful Chelsea, Manhattan. Yes. And Sonia, good to see you.
Hi, I'm Chelsea, Manhattan.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah,
And we'll go
across the
to
street
Julian.
from me.
Right. Julian.
Hi, Carol.
My name is Julian, and I'm on the planet of the Upper East Side, Manhattan.
It is a different planet up there, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It really is. And there are people there that look like they are from other planets, and we welcome them. We welcome them. Okay, we'll go to Jim.
Jim from Brooklyn.
Okay, Doreen.
Doreen from Jersey City.
Yay, Jersey City, yes. And we're going to go to Michael.
Mike out in Pennsylvania.
All right, Pennsylvania. And who we have here? Who's the last one? 908.
Oh, that's me, Nick. Joe Foster.
Oh, Joe. Hi.
Hi. How you doing?
Great. Welcome. Well, I think we're ready to go. We're recording now. So, Joe, I just asked you to just comment on anything you would like in a brief talk that's on your mind right now that you might want to share with our group. So please go right ahead. Everybody, this is Joe Foster. Give him a hand.
Okay.
Okay, you got some applause there. Please go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Joe Foster here. Nick was kind enough to have me on, and he asked me pick a topic to choose to speak about. I'm going to talk about something that I don't think anybody knows. Something that happened, especially in New York, most of you being from New York, I believe you'll probably appreciate this. A number of years ago, I worked for a large financial services firm down in Lower Manhattan, over on Wall Street. And while there, I had a kind of an interesting job. I ran a data center for this financial services firm, but we also built a bank from the ground up, a state-chartered bank in the state of New Jersey, for the sole purpose of clearing government securities directly with the Federal Reserve Bank of New York down there in Lower Manhattan on behalf of the parent company. Now, there was a repeal of a couple of laws that were put in effect during the crash of 1929, or after the crash of 1929. One was Glass-Steagall, the other one was SEBA. And the reason this is being done is in order to allow American banks to become more competitive with their foreign counterparts, which they were massive compared to the size of our largest bank back in the 80s. Well, anyway, to make a long story short, during this period of time, I was there for about 5 years, and we actually cleared that first government security in December of 1986 with the Federal Reserve Bank of New York on behalf of my parent company. That was historic in of itself. However, things got a lot more interesting. Of course, everybody remembers the crash of 87, Black Monday. It started on the Friday previous to that. And of course, we know that there was a problem with program trading and also liquidity of the system, and caused a major panic, and things really blew up rather quickly. Well, that's what most people know about. But what people probably don't know too much about is that we also came close a year or so later of coming to the first bank holiday since the Great Crash.
Oh,
And what happened there, in Lower Manhattan, there was a fire in one of the major substations that belonged to Con Ed. And that fire caused an outage all through Lower Manhattan, knocking out phones and a lot of other things. Well, the Federal Reserve Bank, having its own mainframe computer system, and dealing with hundreds of billions of dollars of funds and securities transfers, their mainframe computer went over to battery backup and then kicked in the turbines. They had generators, but the turbines caught fire. Now, my data center, we would start communicating with the Fed 8 o'clock in the morning, every morning, Monday through Friday. So this one particular morning, my communications person tried to establish the link with the Fed and said, call back in 15 minutes. Now, this went on every 15 minutes. We were calling back, and they were still not ready to go up and actually start clearing government securities. Meanwhile, all the users, the securities traders, were going absolutely crazy. They were blaming us for the outage, which is typical. But what happened was that we also tested security, our backup systems, the Fed's backup systems, about a year earlier. We were the first bank to test backup to backup with them. My system was actually located in New York, my backup system, and the Fed's backup system was located up in Pearl River, up the Hudson.
right.
Well, anyway, the Fed was not ready to really take the chance and go up there and clear government securities from their backup site. 11:30, Wayne Angel, the head of the Fed at the time, that if we don't go live with this thing in 15 minutes, about quarter of, they were going to declare the first bank holiday
Whoa,
for the New York Fed at that time.
wow.
And this was after the crash of '87. So you would have had a massive panic worldwide, but nobody really knew about this. This is one of the things that was kept very, very quiet.
You bet they did.
So, well, there's more too. Also, the firm that I was with, we also had the largest trading loss in the history of Wall Street. A single 30-year-old trader dealing in government securities. Actually, what he was doing, he was trading and he was going outside of the system. And he wanted to hit a home run and make another $2 million bonus that year. He always bet his bank every day in the wrong direction. So he was losing his bank. That happened 4 days in a row. And by the time Friday came around, he didn't even bother coming back in.
Wow.
That's when they broke into his desk and they found all the trading tickets, because all the money center bank trading partners were all calling this firm, our firm, demanding payment for all the trades that this guy was making, and it wasn't being cleared. And the reason it wasn't being cleared was he was bypassing all the safety systems. The Bloomberg system is, Michael Bloomberg developed this system back in the 80s for the company, and is a very, very good internal securities trading monitoring system, basically. That was bypassed, as was the person-to-person check. The supervisor did not check. So at the end of the day, there was $560 million of money that had to be paid up by the company. But now the company was technically in default. It was bankrupt.
Ouch.
And yes, and this was never known. It was kept secret by the Wall Street Journal. And my counterpart, okay, I ran the data center. My counterpart, who had the back office operation, he had all of his people stripping physical securities so that they can enter them into the system and liquidate them to pay the debt. By the time this is done, $470 million is what they ended up paying out. This is all true and was never made fully public.
What happened to the guy?
So,
Yeah, what happened to the man?
yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm glad you asked it. Friday, he didn't show up. They fired him summarily that Friday. Monday morning, he ended up working for one of the competitor firms. You can't make this stuff
that
up.
Joe. You can't make that up. It's just life is wilder than anything you can sit down and fantasize with. Really.
Absolutely.
Oh my
Absolutely. So, I mean, I figured since I had a limited amount of time to talk about something, I figured why not make something public that nobody knows?
Well, thank you.
Well, I'm pretty sure nobody knows.
Right. No, of course they would guard that at the time with their life. Oh my God, it came so close.
Oh yeah.
Does anybody have any quick questions for Joe? Just raise your hand so I know who you are. Anybody right now? Joe, when I was working near Wall Street, I went to the Federal Reserve on Maiden Lane.
Right.
Right, which is, as you know, it looks like a fort. It is a fort. It's
incredibly,
it goes down many, many feet. And I was able at that time to get in the elevator with people and go down deep into the ground and actually see the gold.
Yes. Yep.
And it was absolutely an amazing thing to witness and to see what was really down there. I tried that a couple of years ago, and they said that they weren't taking any more people down there. So I don't know what's going on now, but it was a very, very impressive building and an experience to see the amount of gold stored in that facility. Have you seen it yourself?
Oh yeah, I had to go to meetings there. Matter of fact, Paul Volcker knew each and every one of us personally. And he didn't like what we represented because we represented what could have possibly put the entire payment system at risk. It's kind of a complicated story, but we built this bank, a commercial bank, from the ground up with the sole purpose of clearing government securities, but also we wanted to finance the intraday trading. And that's what they said, absolutely not, because that's what got Wall Street into trouble back in 1929. They were using depositors' savings accounts for risky investments in stocks and bonds.
Right.
So that's the reason Glass-Steagall and Siebel was put into place.
Wow.
But this is only part of the story. I mean, first of all, Wall Street, for all intents and purposes, is like a pirate. It's like a pirate's den. It was back then, and I'm pretty sure it's probably pretty much the same now. It's very important. Don't get me wrong; it's an important part of our society. But the thing is that it has very little to do with reality. It doesn't really produce anything other than financial capital acquisition, basically. But the interesting thing about the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, most people don't realize this, it's not a wing of the government. It's actually owned by several banks. In the Federal Reserve System, there's 12 Federal Reserve banks, but all they are really is the same type of central bank that most other countries have as well. And it's all banker controlled. It is not government controlled.
So I have a question that might relate to this. And as long as we're talking about the subject, when 9/11 happened, there were a great deal of stories about the fact that a great amount of gold, which was secured in one of the areas of the World Trade Center, disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And there was I'm unclear about if they ever found out where it went or who did it. Do you have any information on that?
No, I just, based upon what my limited exposure was, nothing would surprise me. I mean, what we as people, in the street, if you will, what we see is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
What actually goes on is much deeper, and the people that are involved in it, who knows who they may be. I mean, conspiracies do exist, contrary to what people say about conspiracy theorists. They do exist.
There's a lot more about the 9/11 that still has not been revealed or made public. And I was at a couple of the meetings at the Quaker complex down around 17th Street on the east side, where they were doing meetings there. And it's an incredible group of people that are really trying to have an agenda to have a real hard look at the evidence of what was really going on in 9/11, and they're doing a terrific job. I just had to mention that because in my view, this whole committee are heroes that are trying to uncover what really went on, and there's so many questions still about how it all came down. So just wanted to give a salute to them. Does anybody have any more questions for Joe?
Yeah, Joe,
What
have they,
year,
Yes.
Oh, wait, Julian, you're next. Go ahead.
yeah, just what year was that fire again, Joe?
That would have been around 1988.
1988. Okay.
1980. Okay.
Well, okay, what all you have to do, you get a pretty much exact date. Google major fire down at Lower Manhattan that knocked out phone service for the entire area.
Yeah, I remember. I remember that because I think I was visiting. I think in 1988. I think the Mets were in the World Series. I'm not sure.
They well may have been, but that's the key period, because they did not. I'll tell you right now, there was very little about that coming that close within minutes of going into a bank holiday.
What month was that?
Again, the month is the same, almost exact same date, within 2 or 3 days of that major fire down there in Lower Manhattan.
Which was?
I can't remember the date right offhand. I'm
Not
talking
the date,
to my
but
phone.
the month.
But I'm trying to remember.
Oh.
The fire took place. It wasn't during the winter, that I know.
Okay. All right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was during
Come back to
the.
that. Hal, you had a question? Go ahead.
right, have they put any systems in place since to prevent, that happening again, what that guy did?
Good question.
On Wall Street, I'm pretty sure it did. Now, that one there was a breakdown of the system itself. The system was the supervisor of that trader, that 30-year-old trader, did not do what he was supposed to do. The 30-year-old trader, the way you do a trade, you pick up your phone and call your counterpart at one of the other money center banks. And you say, I want to buy X amount of this government security. And the guy on the other end does the same thing. He acknowledges the sale, and they both fill out tickets. The tickets are then handed to a clerk, and the clerk will enter them into an internal trading system for tracking purposes. Because you have to close out and settle up by close of business on the day that you make the trade.
Ah,
Now that was the third thing that didn't take place. These guys all know each other. The traders know each other from the various banks and everything. And it looks like somebody was covering for the guy for a period, but you can only do that for so long because everybody has to settle up. So when they made the demand for payment and they couldn't make the payment, it was the following week that they were doing cutting the coupons from the security itself. Mortgage-backed security. We just visualize a mortgage. And then they would enter it into our internal system so that they could liquidate it and do a funds transfer. That's pretty much how the thing went. So now everybody got very nervous and said, okay, let's keep track of these guys because they all want to hit a home run. It's a very competitive business and everything. So they didn't do it there, but years later in Singapore, the exact same thing was done in the exact same way by another trader, and he did it. It was much bigger. It was like $700 or $800 million.
wow.
Yeah, and he got caught eventually, I'm not sure who the parent company was. I think it was maybe a British company, but they had a branch down in Singapore. So didn't happen again on Wall Street that I'm aware of. It may have, who knows?
Incredible story, just absolutely. Anybody else now have a question for Joe? We have, okay, so Carol, please go ahead, talk up now.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, okay, so you described what happened with the actual trading that caused the crash, but the fire came afterwards. Were
Yes.
you saying that the fire was accidental?
Oh, yeah. It was.
Or what?
Yeah, this is a Con Ed substation, but it was a critical substation down in Lower Manhattan.
Yeah,
Once they lost power, all banks have backup power.
right.
And the Fed did as well. But the problem that their backup, their turbines caught fire when they went from battery to kick into diesel generators.
Okay, because near tragedies occur around our nation and elsewhere in the world all the time. I remember reading about it's in a book called Killing Our Own. It's like over 20 years ago. All these near nuclear accidents that almost happened around the country, like poisoning the water supply for San Diego, things along those nature. So it's not something that was arson. It's just bad. The system broke down, is what you're saying, and almost caused that problem.
Yes.
I think Wall Street has moved its systems to New Jersey now.
Well, no, even back then, okay, the whole thing, even back in the 80s, we were very concerned about power outages, especially anything to do with the payment system, or obviously national security, which, if you think about it, the payment system is part of a national security concern. So my bank, my operation, we were the first one to build a disaster site. And we were the first one to test that disaster site with the Fed's disaster site. Now, here's the funny thing. We did billions of dollars worth of funds and securities transfers every day. And on that day that we almost went into the bank holiday, we cleared with the Federal Reserve Bank at New York over 2,400 baud, basically dial-up modem.
Oh.
Okay, that shows, I mean, it worked well. We had a dedicated lease line, but we had a 2,400 baud modem that we had to kind of dial their circuits up there in the Pearl River. I'm sure it's more sophisticated now, but that was back in the 80s. That was pretty much state of the art at the time.
Okay, anybody else know, before we go, have any other questions for Joe? Just give me a signal, raise your hand, or verbally say something if I can't see you on the screen.
Nick, it's Doreen. I wanted to ask Joe about Wells Fargo. I thought you said they passed the law, but didn't Wells Fargo use the money from their depositors to invest and were caught?
As near as I can tell, we were not allowed to do that because we were a financial services firm that built a little $1.2 billion bank, okay? So it's basically a question of like tail wagging the dog. What Paul Volcker was most concerned about, and I'm going to say rightfully so, is that we would start financing our intraday by loaning ourselves our own money. So it's almost like double jeopardy, and that would put the taxpayer at risk because the taxpayer has to cover losses under FDIC, okay, or your insurance. So they were looking at that as saying, you guys could really do some damage if that's the case. So we were not allowed to make commercial loans to our own company, our own parent company. So we still had to go out to a correspondent bank to fund our intraday trading. So we didn't put the payment system at risk. It was a traditional type of relationship. So now what Wells Fargo did, I'm sorry, I've been out of the business for a number of years. So my guess is that if they did that, they did it probably in violation of Glass-Steagall. because I believe parts of Glass-Steagall are still in place.
Yeah, they got caught and they got, I think, fined.
Yeah, that's, okay, well, welcome to Wall Street. The secret is don't get caught.
Thank you.
Okay, I do, Nick, I do have one comment.
Julian, before you do that, Michael, you had a question?
I have a question.
Yes,
Michael, please, go ahead. Michael?
Mike's out here, but I don't have a question.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we thought you were signaling. You're not signaling. Okay, Michael, sorry. I thought you were. Okay, Julian, please, you had your hand up.
Yes, Joel, thank you so much.
Yes.
I was reading yesterday about the difference between gold and Bitcoin.
yes.
And the fact that with this new administration, it seems like the Bitcoin is increasing tremendously, they say. And then at the same time, there's some executive pundits that say that there's going to be a crash. So what is your take on also that, as well as the cryptocurrency that is being set upon us, and the paper money is being taken away from us?
Good question.
That's an excellent question and a tremendous topic. No, I'm not an expert. I can only go by what I read and what my gut tells me.
Please, your
Now,
gut is
Bitcoin-
better than mine. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say Bitcoin right now is almost $40,000 a coin, I believe. Now, the thing about Bitcoin, the thing that makes it valuable, sort of, not totally, but sort of, is the fact that they have a limited number of Bitcoins, and that's what, the supply and demand is what's driving that. However, there's some weak points to this as well. And I know that a lot of people are pushing the Bitcoin because of the uncertainty of the dollar, number one. The Chinese are releasing their own electronic currency called the yuan, as is Russia, and I think Iran has even. So I'm not exactly sure whether it's going to be one of those safe haven type of bets. That could head south real quick as well under certain conditions, and I'm not exactly sure what those conditions would be. But be a little skeptical, and I guess the strategy for any investing is diversify and make sure that you hedge. And I don't know if that answers it. I'm not a big Bitcoin fan myself. I understand the concept, and it's kind of a cool concept, but I'm more of a traditionalist. So.
Yeah. Well, my skepticism has already cost me $35,000.
Ouch. That hurt. That hurt.
No, in regards to, I was ready to jump into. Well, I knew about Bitcoin when it was like around, $2,000, and then and then I've been skeptical, and then I came across it again at $5,000. And I was ready to jump in, and then my skepticism stopped me, and now it's at $40,000. So, my skepticism is also blocking me from taking sometimes the risks that I feel that is important to take.
Yeah. Now, here, I'm sure you probably saw the story, and this is just like the past day or two. The gentleman that got into Bitcoin at a very low price and everything, and he acquired, he kept buying Bitcoin. He was up to about $220 million.
Wow.
And he had everything on a flash drive, and then he forgot the password. He's down to his last 2 tries to get into that. And of course,
that's one of the crazy things of Bitcoin is the fact that if you forget your password, then that's it. You're
Yep.
Joe, I just read that the other day, that whole story. And so in other words, he's got 2 more chances. And if he doesn't get the password right, he loses all of it.
Yep. You can't hack those passwords apparently.
And yet at the same time, I was also reading the fact that with the new technologies and all that, there are people now that are attempting to hack into Bitcoin. So it can start being a Disneyland of cryptocurrency in many ways.
Yes. Matter of fact, I think what people were doing, some very, very famous people, less than a year ago, had their accounts hacked, in which they had Bitcoin involved. Now, it's not quite the same, but it shows that, you know, the human aspect of it is the weak point. If your memory's bad, and the hashed password that is machine generated, you're not going to guess that in a million years. So this guy has 2 chances left, but he's no closer than when he had 100 chances.
And Joe, and Joe, where do you see the banking system going in these next years?
The banking. Well, the only ones in the world, you have to understand, all the central banks. There's only 2 or 3 countries that don't have central banks right now. They basically control the finances of the world. Now, what they're going to do, everybody's heading towards a cashless society.
Yes.
For a number of reasons. First of all, 20% of our economy is it's a service or a barter type of. They can't tax it because they can't get to it. If you go to something where an electronic currency, every dollar is going to be known and every dollar is going to be taxed. So they're going to be going to that. Everybody's going to be going to that. So it's going to be Bitcoin or something like Bitcoin. Somehow I think the governments aren't going to go with that because if they can't control it, if they can't tax it, they're not going to allow it. And somehow they'll be able to defeat it. So even Bitcoin, if you look at the aggregate amount of money, it's relatively small and it's not getting that much bigger, even though it had such phenomenal jumps in the value of it. So I think that what you're going to end up with is the chip. You're going to be chipped, and it's going to be not only your finances, but your medical. It'll track you going from town to town. It will track you from country to country. And that's what globalism is all about. That's the whole goal of globalism. Matter of fact, the interesting thing, I was a bank officer. Now, I never had any banking experience whatsoever. So right there, that should have been a dead giveaway. Why are they hiring me to do this? And I have the first idea about banking. But that's the reason that they did hire me, because I didn't have any idea about it. But what happened was, everybody who was old enough remembers NAFTA. Remember when NAFTA came in? It was a big, big deal. The left loved it, the right loved it, everybody loved it. Everybody was, moving to the future. Well, the interesting thing that I saw up close and personal, the week that NAFTA was enacted and they sent the money overseas, all that money started coming back into accounts that my company had control of. I had to open these accounts as a bank officer. So I had to use my stamp, I had to sign off, and the names of the people that were involved was pretty amazing. And it was, you could see the dollars going from the government to South America, and then money coming back into private accounts with generals and admirals and even, religious people. And it was all a flow going out, immediately turned around, and you saw a flow coming back. So put that in the place where you think about it.
Joel, do you know the name Catherine Austin Fitz?
I've heard the name, yes.
I suggest you, as well as the people here on board, look into her, because she's a major player of the central banking, as well as she has an amazing video about that, as well as the whole new reset program that's being put upon.
Julie, I posted several of her videos. You're absolutely right. She's a very smart lady, and I liked her. But she says it like it is, and she gives a very good. Absolutely, that's a great recommendation. Thanks for bringing that up. And Joe, really check those out. She is amazing, and she's got such information, cutting edge.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, I'm assuming that she's again it.
And there's a lot going on with her too. She's got other subjects she covers. It's knowing you, Joe, you would find her fascinating. And once you start seeing her videos, I'm telling you, it's like potato chips. You're going to be hooked.
But she was the assistant secretary of housing and I believe urban development under President Bush.
Yeah.
And then what happened is that she was trying to clear and clean some things up, and then she was blocked and being pushed away. And then she quit, or she got fired, and then she became a whistleblower. But what I love about her is her calmness, her intelligence, her fortitude, and as Nick says, she just tells it like it is, but very simply, under no threat. And she's just telling us exactly what the plans are, because she's part of that whole system.
I wish we had more people like her that are trying to get to the truth and trying to make people aware of what's going on. She would be on my list, one of the heroes, true heroes.
Yeah.
I just saw a cat. I saw a cat's tail. Sonia, you have a pussy cat. Look at that cat. Oh, what's the name?
Star, because she has.
Oh, wow. Oh, look at that.
That's right. Her name is Star.
Joe, I wish you could see it. That's a beautiful cat face we're looking at right now.
Oh, really? What that cat is it?
Joe, thank you so much for your talk. Totally appreciate that. I also should say that Joe is doing some very cutting edge Zoom meetings, and I've been putting them on so the Disclosure Network people could take a look at them. They're really a very cutting edge. And Joe, you're doing a great job with that.
No, well, thank you, Nick. Thank you for being there every week with me.
Total pleasure. All right, I'm going to let you go back, and thank you again. And we're going to start now, guys, going to our general meeting, which is going to be a roundtable discussion. And I really left this open. I know that some of you have some things you really want to get on the table right away. Susan, I think you are one of them. So why don't you unmute, if you will, Susan, and then why don't you put on the table something that you'd like to discuss?
Well, I'm really quite concerned about the vaccine thing, and what will happen if they are mandated. And I think we're going to have a meeting on Nick in a couple of weeks that's going to cover this. But if people could think about that and think about, what do we do if they mandate vaccines?
Any comments, guys? Raise your hand if I can see you. Julian, look like you're ready to go. Go ahead.
I've been listening and watching the Children Defense Organization of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. In these last days, weeks and months, and I feel that the people deserve to watch and read and listen to what he has to say, and his family of friends, because they're on top of this. Him being a lawyer as well, he understands the judicial process of what is and what our rights are. Because what's interesting is that no one is really talking about us as human beings and what rights we have, as well as also this vaccine that's being administered. It has certain elements and components that supposedly is against the Nuremberg amendment, and this is not something is not right here. Something is not kosher in this game playing. And so I feel that it's important to look into what rights we have, and if so, what we can do to say, you know what, I know this and this and that about this, as well as also it has supposedly the people that I've listened to and read, and these are professionals and doctors and scientists and virologists that talk about the fact that also it has aborted cells, fetuses, as well as other components and elements that, again, we as human beings have the right to say, you know what, I do not concur with this at this time.
Thank you, Julian, for that.
Well, yes. Can I just make a comment?
Sure,
Yeah,
please,
we have the right. Sorry?
Yes, please.
We have the right.
Your camera? Okay, that's a little bit, yeah, that's good. Yes.
Okay, yeah, it's to have the right, but I feel that our legal system is broken. So,
yes.
how do we get around that?
Well, yeah, because there's so much compromised. There's so much, what's the word? Compositional game playing being played by and within the government and all these agencies and stuff like that. But that's why we have somewhat of a justice system. We're not totally, we're not totally in a revolution where, we have no rights whatsoever. And there are a few people, especially who are of that realm, like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and others who are demanding as well as communicating and speaking through all the censorship that they're going through to allow us to know that they're working not only for themselves, but for us in regards to creating a new system. But within the new system, we have rights. We have rights. As human beings, we have rights.
No,
well, I agree, we do, but.
No. Anthony, did you or Jim, did anybody else have a comment here about the vaccine? Carol? Anybody?
Not about that, but when you're on to the next subject, I want to have some comments.
Okay, Susan, just a general, I got to throw this in here because you're talking about something here that is triggering me into, here is another example in the past year or two, how they've been, and they being, again, the obvious players, are ramming things down our throats, literally.
Yeah.
They're saying it, because of the way they're doing it, which is unscrupulous, that they're saying they're implying you really don't have a shot at your own questions or your own answers. And I'll give you examples. 5G right now is being forced upon everybody, and there's many reports about how truly dangerous it is. And I can give you some examples. I won't take it now to do that, but trust me on this one. There's a lot of very troubling information about 5G. Also, in line with that, the smart meters that they also have been ramming down our throats. They never gave any particular data of if it was even safe. We're talking safe. They simply, and this was going on a long time, secretly, as well as obviously installing antennas on the buildings everywhere. I mean, in the Upper East Side of Manhattan, it's loaded with antennas. I look out my window, I'm seeing antennas. I go out my front door, and they recently installed 25 smart meters outside of my wall of my apartment. And I'm feeling headaches, and my tinnitus has sparked way up there. It's like tinnitus times 10. I'm hearing a lot more ringing in my ears, and I'm going to go for radiation to see if I have contracted some radiation from the smart meters, which could very well happen. I know of one woman who they installed the antennas on her roof, and she lives on the top floor of a building, which means that her apartment is just right under the antennas. The woman was driven out of her apartment and she had to sleep in her car for months. And that's going on. And that's a true story. That's how it affected.
I believe you. I believe you.
So,
but the thing is, Nick, if they're ramming all of this, if they're doing all of this without our consent,
right,
you know,
and not giving us a chance to ask the questions we need to ask that are good questions for our own safety and the safety of our loved ones and our children. And this is going on, and there's more to this. And the vaccine, as you brought up, is a very good example of what's happening right now. And Bill Gates and that crowd is jamming this down our throats. Other comments, please.
Nick, Joe Foster, I have a quick comment for you.
Well, please.
There's been a number of things. First of all, you have to understand the FCC is saying that it's perfectly safe. Okay. Most engineers that are RF engineers, for whatever reason, they also kind of poo-poo the whole thing about there being a danger to us. Now, non-ionizing radiation is not as bad as ionizing radiation. Now, it's true. But the other problem is that there was so much of this radiation out there that all the smart meters and the smartphones, your television set, your toaster, the Internet of Things is going to be G5. G6 is even worse. G6 is the Internet of People. Now you're getting down to a frequency range that's getting close to the frequency that the human brain operates at. Mm-hmm. The Earth has its own frequency as well. And the saturation of this, even though they keep telling us it's perfectly safe, you have to ask the question. What we're doing, it's actually, I'm on the Cable Commission, I'm also on the Planning Board, and I'm on the Environmental Commission in my town. And it's a fight even with them, getting them to understand that what we have to do is just start asking the right questions. We're not going to stop the technology. But what we can do is make sure that those pole-mounted antennas, even though they're relatively low frequency, low power, still they have to be within 100 to 200 feet to be effective. The antennas themselves may not be the major problem. The major problem may be the handsets, our smartphone, the toaster, anything wireless that has to communicate with those antennas on the poles are going to be radiation hazards. It's just like G3 and G4, they said, don't put the cell phone up to your head because there is a radiation hazard. And consequently, it's going to be even worse with G5 and G6, forget about it. Okay, G6 is going to be in the frequency of the human brain anyway. The other thing about vaccines, I was reading that they're actually being able to develop vaccines that could be activated with RF frequency radiation.
Think of that.
So,
that alone, yeah. that is a horrible thing when you think of what that implications are, Joe. It's frightening.
Yeah, and don't put it past Bill Gates to be pushing for a technological trigger mechanism like that.
Right. No?
Joe, real quick question.
Mm-hmm.
I keep hearing that vaccines will be activated. Activated to do what?
Okay. They are talking about, I forgot exactly what the term is, but they have an injectable type chip. It's actually kind of like a little bubble of gel, like a gel, but it has the characteristics of microcircuitry. That could be injected with a needle along with a vaccine. The activation of something like that, now, depending on what it's designed to do, they have smart dust now. They have drones that are the size of grains of sand. And all of this stuff can be networked using technology like 5G. Okay? So the activation of something, can you put something that would activate a component in the vaccine? Well, I'm not a biologist. or microbiologists or whatever the people that are playing with this. But my guess is with the technology as it's being developed, it's going to be capable of being used that way. So I don't know if that answers your question. I know it doesn't assuage your fears.
Of course.
It's
And Nick?
it's a pivotal point here because one thing leads to the next, as you're saying. I know that China right now is going ahead with the 6G. I know that they're doing that right now. Think of that.
Yep.
That's how far this has gone. As
Yep.
far as activation, one of the doctors said that once the vaccine is into you, and Susan, listen to this, what is in there, by the way, it includes the fibers from dead babies. That's part of what the vaccine is. That to me is just nightmarish. But they said that once it's in, you can't take it out. Once it's in your body, that's it. Now that's scary for me too. I personally don't want to go near that vaccine because the people that are behind it, I don't trust. I just don't. Susan, do you have any more comments about the vaccine before we go on?
I mean, I know all of that. So what I'm asking is, should we be making plans and, for avoiding this now?
Anybody want to comment?
I'm sorry, what was that question again?
Susan, repeat it.
It's not a question. I mean, I know all of this stuff about the vaccines. I've been reading a lot, and my head is swimming with all of this stuff. But I personally don't want it and don't want anything to do with it. But should we not be making plans now as to how we're going to avoid this? Should it become mandated?
Okay, Julian, you have a comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, I feel what's important is that, yes, what Joe was talking about, that's already in the vaccine. The hydrogel, the nanocubes, all that and more. There's a brilliant interview with a woman called Celeste Salome with David Icke that is very revealing, as well as there's a Dr. Madaj who also is very good in what she says about the vaccine. Again, I feel that what's important is for us to know how to protect ourselves in one way or another, because obviously these people who are administering this, or as well as taking this, or will be taking this, they will also be taking some sort of possibly an antidote or something on some level to keep themselves in harmony and in sanity of some sort. And what's important is for us to go to those places. As I said, you have Robert F. Kennedy Jr., you have Del Bigtree, but also what is NASA up to in regards to on the whistleblower level, what herbs or chemicals or whatever we can do to cloak ourselves and protect ourselves from the 5G that's hitting the cities, from the antennas, from everything else. It seems like we're still surviving everything from the chemtrails that are now called SRI, as well as the fluoride, as well as the GMOs, and everything. As human beings, we're still withstanding all of this. So there's something in us, call it the God particle or something, that is allowing us to experience whatever it is that we're experiencing. And we need to really go deeper and deeper into that energy, I feel.
Guys, don't you feel as though we're for everything that Julian and everyone else is saying, don't you feel as though we're being attacked? This is right. Don't you feel that all this stuff between chemtrails coming down on our food and on our water, and then the inoculations and all the rest of this stuff? I mean, it's just like one thing after the next. Any other comments on the subject? Go ahead. Carol, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to say that, touching on what Sarah had said,
right?
How do we protect ourselves? Well, there's one thing, legally, that's the first thing, protecting your right to choose or not to choose. And
Right.
we're starting to see, and also you have to convince people. Everyone here is convinced that there's something wrong with the vaccine, but not everyone out there is.
No.
Right.
Try to critique Bill Gates. Oh, he's wonderful. He's this. They don't believe it. Okay, but we're starting to see certain things that show how we are manipulated. The general public is manipulated. It's an old story. Selling products, trying to get people to buy one product over another. You've got that to start with. Well, now that's moved on further. And I want to just bring attention to the idea of censorship. If you think of the days when the slaves would gather together, the slave owners, I know down in New Orleans they did this, they would prohibit them from gathering together for too long because that's how people started to talk, communicate, and plan revolts. And we're starting to see that in a general way. Consider what's happening to not Gab, but Parler. How Parler was suddenly put out of business. All the companies colluded. Now the excuse was, oh, they had these violent people planning these uprisings. I happen to be on that platform, but also another one called Gab that went through this very thing several years ago. It was founded by a man who came from Silicon Valley, and he went to Texas to found his own company as a competitor to Twitter. So what they did to him was, after a while, they denied him service to servers, to PayPal, so they couldn't run. They even went into his bank account and tried to keep him from having a bank account to just pay bills. So what he did was he went around the system. This is part of what Bitcoin can be used for, not as an investment, but a way around the system and the big companies that control. He went around the system. He found a server. What they finally got him on was that they had someone on there who was a murderer. So because he had this murderer on, and the owner said they banned him because they have free speech. All kinds of people were on there. But the general public believes they're all crazy right-wingers, but they're not. There's all sorts of people on that platform. So they shut him down for 2 or 3 days. He went to a server in Sweden that was not controlled by the big tech companies here in the United States. So he got them, and that's working. Then he was banned from using PayPal or credit cards. So it runs on donations. People pay by check or through Bitcoin, because Bitcoin cannot be controlled by the banks, at least not right now, and not by any of these big tech companies. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. gave a really interesting interview to Daniel List, the dark journalist, where he said when he goes on these programs, he was a friend of.
Carol, you're just muted.
I know.
There you go.
So Robert F. Kennedy is an interesting person. He went on an interview with Daniel List, the dark journalist, and he said whenever he went on to a big Fox or he went on to CNN, and he was also a friend of, I forget his name, but at Fox, they told him not to critique big pharmaceutical companies because they give them money to support them.
Right.
So you saw with Parler, they put them down because they started this riot, which is a mixture of all kinds of things. All these people go to huge to Davos, they're not all Trump supporters. It's a mixture of people who create problems. You can't tell one from the other when you see them. There were legitimate people who went there to show dissatisfaction with this election. I mean, I'm not going to say whether it was real, I don't know. But I do know that when I saw that, those are antitrust issues. So there's legal things that can be done. But now Congress is talking about retaliation, punishing anyone who was in the Trump administration anyone who worked for Trump, that retaliation is something that is bad. I work for a big company, and when they review discrimination issues, a person, it also overlaps to whistleblowers. Somebody is complaining about something the company is doing, or general employment issue. Retaliation, the company it's illegal to retaliate. So what is Congress doing? They're retaliating. What are they doing? Because they want to retaliate. They want to unseat senators so that the Senate then goes to one party. There's a problem there. Or one party, there should be a mixture of parties, like Europe has different parties. We only have two major ones, and whenever a third one starts to show their head, they ban them, they stop them. So I just wanted to point that out. I also want to point out that Bitcoin cryptocurrencies are not government issued currencies. They're issued by private companies. And so what are you doing? You get involved, and eventually they will probably go into competition. I don't know who owns Bitcoin, but I had to do for work. I had to go to a workshop about Bitcoin. They use about not Bitcoin, but the system under Bitcoin, which is called blockchain technology. That's a new information technology system that's considered like a shared spreadsheet. That's the thing that makes Bitcoin work. And other companies are going to start using it or have tried to start using it. I don't know where it's going to go, but I think those are things that are very much visible to people who read, who are thinking. They can actually see that taking shape. So the issue about vaccines, the G5, and what's going on in there, I think that they're going to try to relegate that to some fringe thing. If you believe in that, you're a believer in fringe, crazy theories like QAnon. They suddenly, I heard on Meet the Press during the election, QAnon. But QAnon and all those also have other theories that have some basis in truth, like child trafficking. They have other theories, well, UFOs, of course, and other things that are going on. Not just the crazy theories. There are crazy theories that people aren't going to accept, but they're real issues. So they'll just relegate it into this category of you're all crazy if you believe that. So I just wanted to bring those things to your attention.
Carol, you're identifying some very major points here, and they all are important, and they all work together. And as far as the public goes, the general public still thinks because they bought hook, line, and sinker that the corporate press said, we're looking for this. We want the inoculations. They can't come fast enough. They're going to be good for you. We're going to get them into the schools. We're going to give them to the teachers. Everybody's going to get them. I got a call the other day that said, do you want an inoculation? And I said, no, I do not. And she went, oh, all right. But I mean, this is how far this has gone. The public has been sold a bill of goods. And as far as the research of what it's going to do to you in the near future and the far future, these are huge questions that nobody can answer. Jim, did you have any comments on this area?
I don't. I'm just listening.
Okay, all right.
I don't. Although I did actually speak to a friend of mine who was 87. I spoke to him yesterday. He said he just got the vaccine. He lives in New York City.
God bless him.
And he was so happy for himself.
Yeah, because they have been told that this is a good thing, that this is, people are waiting in lines for days to get an appointment, as you know, you've seen the news, to get the vaccinations.
Yeah.
It's gone that far. They've totally bought what corporate America is telling them is good. And it's frightening to me. And when you go to people and say, listen to the other data, they either don't have time for that, or they said, well, ABC, NBC, CBS News said it was really good for me. So of course, me and my wife and kids, we all are going to get it. And it stopped every single time I hear that, it just stops me because I'm thinking, oh my God, I hope that it works, but there's too many ifs here. Still too many ifs. Anybody else have any
Hey,
final
Nick.
comments before we go? I want to go to another subject, but you want to, anything else from here? Go ahead, Julian, quick.
In regards to what Carol said about them setting up a certain group of people to administer to the Trump administration and all the people that worked for it, I would suggest people see the movie Fantastic Beasts. And in Fantastic Beasts, there's a Department of Justice and Corrections. And it's exactly what this new administration wants to set up, a Department of Justice and Truth in regards to what their truth is, in regards to
Wow.
and what other people's truth is. It's right there in the movie. It's right there.
Wow. Here we go. You know, I got to say, last night I did a live podcast with Mary Jo Fahey. Again, she's the woman who, together with me, founded Disclosure Network New York 20 years ago here in New York City. And we have a program, a podcast every once a month with Mary Jo Fahey. And we had it last night. And she was identifying how science fiction movies have put something in the storylines that are playing out right now. And she had several examples of that. And when you start going through that, it's staggering how many things that writers way back when were putting in their movies as future cities, as future times, as other kinds of things going on in the world and in society. And bingo, we are living them right now. It's quite a podcast. I'm going to put out in the next few days how you can hear that podcast. Please, it's an hour long. Mary Jo is amazing. She does huge amounts of research. And I think that everybody here, as well as the rest of the people in our group, would be fascinated what she's uncovered. So I just wanted to put that plug out there, and I will give you an email to that very soon.
Thank you.
Go ahead,
Nick,
Matt.
can you hear me?
And going back
Nick?
to what, oh wait, somebody else had a question.
Michael?
Yeah, just a quick question. Does
Sure.
anybody have any comments on Simon Parks and his credibility? If
Oh,
anybody
that's a
knows
good
about
question.
him?
Very good question, Michael. Anybody? Go ahead.
Yeah, I've been listening to him every day, but I just heard the broadcast by Mike Adams, who didn't name Simon Parks directly, but implied that he is actually a CIA disinformation agent,
Right.
which is very shocking because I've
Yes,
been
that
following
is.
Simon.
Susan, that's incredibly shocking because he's one of the people that we've been listening to. And when you hear something like that, you have to go back a step and then re-examine certain things. So yeah.
I don't know. I don't believe
Comments.
that actually, because he's
Yeah.
in too much trouble right now.
Wow, yeah. Anybody else?
Isn't
wanna
too much
talk
trouble?
about
Who
that?
is?
Simon Parks, he's just been kicked off of YouTube. He's got a lawsuit going with BBC. And there's another person who they keep mixing him up with, which is an old dirty trick called Simon Parks, who went AWOL in the British Navy years ago. And they're trying to somehow equate these two guys to discredit the Simon Parks we listen to. So I'm not sure that he's a CIA agent, because you get all this information, so you don't know who's telling the truth.
Well, exactly.
I wanna make a
Exactly. Don't know.
suggestion.
He might be telling the truth, and somebody else comes and says he's an agent.
Personally, I love the guy.
I want to make a suggestion, and that is that if you can, go back a little ways in some of the videos from YouTube for, say, Simon Parks and others, and see what they were saying was going to happen. And then see if any of that came true. And I think you're going to be surprised at your answer. I'm not going to tell you, try to do that. I think that's going to help Michael answer that question you have. It's a very good question.
He was right about the troops that were going into Portland before they actually appeared. He had said on one of his, this was during the summer. He
Okay.
said that there were troops ready to go into Portland, and that was true. That was true.
All right.
He doesn't tell everything he says doesn't come about because he tells you what he hears, but some of it is true. That's the problem with all of these things. What is true, what isn't.
Absolutely, right. And the amount of deception and the amount of deceptive materials, it's at a high point right now.
There are people who say Catherine Austin Fitts is a CIA agent.
Yeah.
I don't believe that either.
No. Jim, you have any comment on that? Because I know you follow some of this.
Yeah, I could say Catherine Austin Fitts is definitely not a CIA agent.
Okay.
And I doubt that Simon Parks is a CIA agent as well.
Okay. Okay, Joe, you have any comment here?
About who is really real deal? Tell you the truth, I don't know. Because it's easy enough to be probably an insert, to be able to start generating that type of thing. Now, to what purpose? Well, what are they trying to do? Would they be trying to gather information on individuals? Would they be trying to promote a certain train of thought, or to divert, get you to this information is interesting because there has to be a grain of truth to it. So I don't know. I mean, I sit there and I have my own suspicions, but it's hard to pin it down because just by the very nature of the animal. So probably the thing to do is if it resonates, if you feel in your gut that the person is the real deal, follow your instinct.
That's how to go. Somebody once said that look at the corporate news at 7:30 at night, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, all of them, and then do the trick that whatever they're saying, go 180 degrees and say, that is the truth. You try that, okay, in the next week, and just see how I've done that myself, and I urge you to do the same thing. Reverse 180 degrees, and then see where your gut is on this, where your feelings are, and eventually, of course, what the facts play out. Anthony, have you ever done anything like that?
No, but the one thing I was going to say is, because I'm back at work the past couple of weeks, they hired me back. Regardless of what we're talking about here in terms of proof and all this, where we're at right now, I do feel like in our country, private corporations are going to be allowed to say, you can't come in our door unless you have a vaccine card. I certainly think that's going to be true on planes. So maybe I'm just cynical here because I just kind of feel like, all right, there's been, whatever the news has been, however it has come about, and however those numbers have come about, inflated as they might be, I don't even know what we can do about it at this point.
Well, certainly they're going to want to say you have to have a test, which I'm okay with, even though the tests could vary or whatever. But right. I'm okay with that. I understand that. I have to do a survey when I go into the office. Have I been with someone who's tested positive? Have I been here? Have I been sick? I understand that. I think legally that will stand. I don't know about the vaccine because the vaccine may not be perfect. I think it can be challenged. That's just my opinion.
Right. I mean, I know like in foreign countries, before you have to have a yellow fever vaccine. Again, regardless of whether or not you think there's nanotechnology in there or not, they're not going to let you in unless you have that. You know what I mean? So I think it's gotten to that point now, as you say, on a global perspective, that this has suddenly come about. The numbers have, become giant, at least as reported. And I think all countries are probably going to go to some level of saying, you need to have this, this, and that. So I feel really cynical about it. I'm hoping that I hope I'm not required to get the vaccine until the very end of it, after we've been able to observe a few things here and there, because I need to go to my job and make some money.
That's a good point. Very good point. Anybody else? We have about 10 more minutes, guys. I want to put one more thing on the table, just briefly.
Nick, if I could just briefly make a statement.
Sure, sure.
Let me go Orwellian for a moment.
Well, please do.
Everything that you all are talking about with the requirements to get tested, the requirements to have a vaccine, the World Health Organization, once the reset is in place, my guess is the next thing you're going to see is a world currency, and that world currency is going to be a social currency, and that it's going to be electronic. But the thing is that you have to jump through all these hoops in order to get your payment. Let's face it, with AI being what it is, the whole transhuman movement, we're pretty much obsolete as far as being needed to do jobs. So if we're going to exist, it's going to be an existence at the benefit of World Health Organization or the oligarchs that maybe run the whole world. Who knows? But the thing is that social currency, you'll have to have everything in order to get paid every week, in order to put food on the table or to put a roof over your head.
Yeah,
very simple.
That's the gun. That is the gun pointing at all of our heads with the potential that may, Joe, what you're saying may be exactly where we're going. Julian in next month is going to be doing a presentation about transhumanism, and he's been doing some amazing research on that. And he's got some just a great program in preparation right now. And Julian, again, that is really one of the focuses. Joe brought this up, but you wanted just a few words about that, if you will.
Well, very quickly, I was asked even yesterday and in the last days. I'm a past life hypnotherapist and a numerologist. Transhumanism comes out to an 8-soul destiny. If you want to know more in depth of the vibration of transhumanism, and 8 is all about power, authority, banks, how to delegate that power, and it's also the word God comes out to an 8. So it's interesting how all of these energies kind of like intermix with each other. And yesterday I was asked, well, with the whole transhumanism model, will the transhumanistic people, will they have souls? And I said, well, that's a good question, because before we're born, spirit chooses not only the mother, but also the time that it goes into the womb. And it's not necessarily in the very beginning of the pregnancy. It's usually during that time. So why not? Because the transhumanism is the hybridization of humans and AI and robots. And the fact that we're making these new humans in our likeness, as God made us in his likeness. So the question is, are we playing God? Is God playing through us to create these new humans? So that's the whole question, as well as who has the answers.
That's a huge question, and I'm so glad that you're pursuing that. That goes into so many other areas, Julian, and I'm thrilled you're going on to the subject. One final, okay, Hal, and then we're going to wrap it up. Go ahead.
Okay, real quick thing. There's been a lot of talk in this meeting about truth, just in a way for the fun of it, with the attack that happened on the Capitol. I found a listing, or I made a listing, excuse me, of verified truths about what happened. So far, I've come up with 17 verified proof that don't agree with each other completely.
What?
It's interesting.
Wow. Wow. Are you saying that there's things fighting each other for what is true?
I'm saying that there's a lot of things fighting for each other for what is true. And I'm also saying, unfortunately, in way too many cases, people feel that the truth is what agrees with your opinion.
Well, okay. And you got a point with that. Guys, we're at the end of this wonderful, again, thank you all for joining us on this one. I love you all, you know that. And together, sticking together and sharing information, that's what we're all about. We're going to have another Zoom meeting in 2 weeks. You're going to get a data on that. And also, again, I urge you to, I'm going to email you all about Mary Jo Fahey's research on the program that she did last night. and I'm going to email that to you so you can access it. One thing she brought up, and this is, I'm going to leave this with you. The data shows that in approximately 40 or 50 years, the world of sperm count will be down to almost zero. I don't know if you've ever heard about this, but this when she was talking about this, and 40 to 50 years, there won't be any sperm to produce children. And we were talking about freezing sperm and doing eggs, and then who would be the parents, or would the state be the? It goes on and on. So I'm just saying that was
Brave New World.
You
read that.
Yeah, it's a lot of information, but all right. So with that, guys, I love you all. Thank you so much. This is Nick Curto for Disclosure Network New York. Thanking you all for either tuning in or being part of our Zoom meeting. We will have another one in 2 weeks. And here's hoping that you all connect the dots, your dots, to seek the truth. Take good care, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.